Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Corey Pierce, Marketing Director at Churn Zero, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled Managing the Customer Journey to Accelerate Account Expansion. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that we are recording this session. A link to the recording will be available approximately 24 hours after the webinar. Throughout the presentation, you are welcome to submit your questions via the question and answer box, and our staff will try and answer them as we go. We will also address as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion towards the end of this webinar. During the presentation, we'll be conducting 3 audience polls. Our speaker will show the poll question and answer selections within the slides. During that time, please make a note of your answer selection to submit your response for the poll once it is launched to the audience. Now I'm pleased to introduce to you today's speaker, Kia Poom. Kia is an entrepreneurial executive with 20+ years of experience leading strategic corporate initiatives. She's held executive positions in account management, customer success, and support at companies such as Eloqua, Oracle, and Adobe. Kia has pioneered the art of customer experience by leading businesses through the transition to customer-centric organizations. Her methodology provides clients with a disciplined and sustainable approach to increasing customer lifetime value and loyalty. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Kia, and let me give you presenter mode.
Thank you, Corey. And welcome everyone to today's webinar on accelerating account expansion. My name is Kia Poom, and as Corey mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Kia CX, a strategic advisory firm that specializes in accelerating growth through a customer-centric approach. I've been in the software business for 23 years and have led every function required to ensure that customers successfully adopt and use the technology so that they remain loyal and buy more. And I also had to do that while figuring out at the same time for the companies I worked at or work with now as clients, how to do that in the most efficient way possible. And so my interest really lies in helping companies using our proven methodology develop a customer-centric model that provides clients with a disciplined approach to driving revenue. And so I'm excited today to be sharing with you what it means to effectively expand revenue from the install base by managing the customer journey. So before we dive into how to expand revenue from customers, I just want to first level set on what customer expansion is. And very simply, expansion is the act of customers buying more products and services because their business is benefiting in doing so. And so what that means is that the more a vendor understands its customer's business and uses that knowledge to make the product a critical ingredient of their growth, the faster expansion happens. So if you take away one thing from today's webinar, I want you to think about how important it is to understand your customers. They specifically chose your product to grow their business. Therefore, it's important to understand what it is that they want to accomplish and help them to be successful. Because if you're enabling their growth, you're going to be enabling yours. So when working with companies looking to grow through an expansion strategy, I consistently see the same mistake in thinking that growing the business means doing the same things only faster and with more resources. And so just to clarify that customer expansion is not about doing more of the same faster. It means being more targeted about what you do with customers and being smarter about how you do it. And now the good news is that by managing the customer journey, an organization can be focused in terms of how it lands and expands accounts to make customer expansion a deliberate practice. So what I want to focus on today then is looking at how do we make expansion a natural consequence of the customer's business evolution with your product. And the best way for companies to do this is to actively understand the customer's business and use that knowledge to manage them to success by making that product critical to the business, and then having that account sticky and ready for expansion opportunity by setting up your own success. Some key concepts that we'll take a look at that are really important in accelerating customer expansion, and I'll be sharing some examples of things you can try with your customers in doing that. But we're going to take a look at understanding the customer journey is a very key point. We'll walk through some key concepts. We're going to look at how do you understand your customer in order to target your services effectively. We'll look at that importance of managing the customers to success, and then we'll look at how do you set up your own organization for success using the power of expectations setting. Now, the reason why understanding your customers is so key to expansion is because that the more that you understand how your product can contribute to the customer's business growth, the more you can expand the product's usage. So what does it mean then to understand your customer's needs? First of all, there's the table stakes information required. Understanding why the customer bought and what they're trying to achieve with your product is fundamental. Then knowing how the customer operates, their business challenges to growth, as well as key milestones such as launch dates, major announcements, product releases. All of those give you valuable insight into what's important to your own customer in order to create product expansion opportunities and motivation. And this information can all be had simply by talking with the customer and asking them for this information, and also using it in the context of managing them through the customer journey. Now, what I want to specifically cover today in terms of understanding the customer are the concepts of customer segmentation and business maturity, as they play a significant role in determining the success of your expansion strategy. Because the customer journey is a table stakes element, we won't cover it in detail in today's presentation. So the idea behind customer segmentation is to group similar customers so you can tailor your product and services to meet the needs of each of those segments. Now, from a marketing perspective, it helps to target very specifically to the needs of this segment for sales conversion. For customer success specifically, grouping customers with the same needs helps customer success to develop a more focused and efficient approach in guiding the customer through the journey. If you know what liked groups of customers need, you can start to be efficient in how you segment those accounts and resource them accordingly. I often use the analogy of working out to illustrate this point. So some people train to be world-class athletes, so that they need to do a lot of training. And some athletes want to be healthy or simply have fun, so they only need to work out a couple of times a week. And depending on an athlete, a coach will train them differently. This concept of different customers having different needs is important for customer success to understand, as a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work when you're looking at expansion. Segmentation helps in identifying the full potential of the varying customers so that delivering the desired outcomes, in other words, training them on the application of the product, is appropriate for their needs and objectives. And so I see this work very effectively with my clients. Too often the focus is predominantly on the product and trying to get customers to do everything with it. So a much more of a product-centric approach. And when that's done, they end up overcomplicating onboarding and implementation and deliver an experience of being hard to do business with. So once a company understands its customer segments, along with the business maturity, which I'll talk about next, that fit into pacing of customers, they're better able to focus on what that land and expand strategy is that is aligned specifically to those customers' goals. Now, I want to show you an example of a segmentation model that was used here specifically was used at Eloqua in segmenting customers. Now, the team determined that spend potential and marketing maturity were key factors in segmenting. So customers were categorized into one of these 4 quadrants. And particularly, the customers on the right in this example have a greater potential to spend and are the ones that Eloqua look to actively expand. And that is that they could either spend more money by expanding out into different departments or regions, or they could also purchase more product. And then on the left side, those customers had either purchased the full product suite or were fully developed or deployed so that there was no reason to sell more to them, or at least not yet. There had to be more in the toolkit to sell in order to do that. And it's not to be confused. I mean, on the enterprise customers, there are very large accounts there. So it was just what more could you do in the expansion realm that was a consideration. On the vertical axis, the maturity of the customer's marketing organization is mapped out here. And the question was, is the account just starting out and the use of a few key product elements enough for them to get started? Or can the customer go on to more advanced topics to expand the usage of the product? So understanding when customers were ready to expand helps to also determine that correct pacing to use with customers, which I'll cover shortly. So therefore, using segmentation is really important to categorize like customers to be more efficient in servicing them, to also target the services delivered to ensure a customer is not over or under-serviced, understanding the segment's general goals to develop a prescriptive approach for what needs to be done and when, including time to discuss opportunities to do more with the product. So you literally want to build into your prescriptive approach opportunities to discuss what more you can do with the product. And then also you want to extend that prescriptive approach to include a path for expanding accounts based on those segment needs. So including opportunities to discuss expansion, but also ensuring that as you're moving your customers along the journey, you are building in a path, a prescriptive approach for how they should be expanding in the product and leading them along when they're ready to do so. So we're coming to our first poll, and the question is, how mature is your organization's segmentation model? Is it missing? We don't segment our customers. Ad hoc, you segment customers but do not change your delivery based on segmentation. Is it repeatable? Your customers are segmented and their service is delivered based on that segmentation. Or is it systemic? You not only do you segment your customers, but you actually use segmentation strategically to land and expand accounts. You build in that expansion opportunity.
So we're getting the poll responses in now, and are you seeing the progress, Kia?
Yeah.
Are you able to see the poll? Okay.
Yep, I'm seeing that a majority are at the ad hoc, that customers are segmented, but you don't change the delivery based on that. The next highest percentage is repeatable, which is awesome. There's that not only that you're segmenting your customers, but your service is altered based on that segmentation. That's great. So if for those that are still at either missing and not segmenting or ad hoc, you want to review your segmentation model and ensure that you're targeting your activities to only those that the customer requires to achieve their goals. Try not to overtax them, but look at what it is what their business objectives are, and ensure that the product is supporting that at that point in time. The other concept that plays into understanding the customer and how a successful account expansion strategy will occur is this notion of business maturity. So the idea is that you want to continually advance the customer's use of your product within their environment, but at a pace that they can handle and manage as well. And there's this fine art of pushing them to their limits and challenging them to do more, but not over challenging them that you in essence are inadvertently causing potential churn risk. So if your product is introducing major change to its users or the business, or you're trying to get the customer to do too much or too fast, not only does this potentially slow down expansion, but it also risks the customer churning. And I've seen that quite regularly as well. We tend to be so passionate about the product and everything it can do. We want to tell customers everything about the product. It can make the product seem difficult and overwhelming and complicated to use, which is definitely not the experience that you want to deliver to your customers. So going back to the sports analogy then, if someone's goal is to run a marathon, but they've never run before, them pacing their training to build up to a marathon is critical to their success and enjoyment. So analogously, pacing the customer's product adoption is a critical part of your expansion strategy. It should be aligned to the customer's maturity in the use of the product. So business maturity helps in determining that appropriate pacing for product expansion and what goals for product usage should be defined within the customer success plan each year. And then every year you can keep building in the opportunity for them to do more and expanded use as it's comfortable for them in a successful way. So it's important to create that land and expand strategy that allows for that expanded adoption, that at a pace that suits the customer and delivers the business value that they expect, so that it's also fun and that it feels easy to do business with you. So here's an example of what business maturity and pacing could mean in a practical sense. At Eloqua, there was this success coach program that was put in place. It was a 10-week program where each customer had a coach assigned to their account that they met with once a week for the first 10 weeks after deployment. And every week the customer was assigned activities and homework to complete on their own to help drive adoption and solidify some of the concepts that they needed to employ in their work. Then they met with their coach, and then they could discuss any of the questions or challenges that they had to using the product in their business environment. The problem that we experienced prior to understanding how business maturity played into expansion was that the program outline was too onerous for the customer to complete. So they weren't even getting it done. It was so much work on top of their day jobs that they just didn't have time for it. So not only what happened then was it was too much, not relevant, there wasn't that motivation to do it either. And customers were fatiguing by having to dive so comprehensively into the product that they avoided completing any of the adoption activities, which ended up putting them at risk for retention. And so once this was realized, the program was actually tweaked to first sit down with a customer, understand what the individual had to get done as part of their regular course of business, understand the business environment within which they were working, and then look at the program elements that were specifically tailored to be relevant to the work that they had to achieve. And the program then covered only those topics that would allow them to successfully get their work done. And once they were proficient with those and got really comfortable at how it was deriving business value for them, then follow-on programs could be conducted to further that expansion. And so it was literally built into the customer success plan and the journey, not only through the year, but over the years, so that it was a natural evolution to get this done. Therefore, if you're looking at your success program, look at what you might be imposing on the customer. Are you overtraining them? Are you having them follow a lot of documentation, learning, materials, bombarding them with information for them to get proficient with your software? And if it's not appropriately aligned to meet with the customer's objectives and a pace, take a look at what you can do to tweak to make it easier for customers to adopt. So the objective of using business maturity is then to understand what is important and relevant to the customer for targeted adoption and pacing, rather than trying to comprehensively get full product usage right out of the gate. And so align customers' use of their product to their goals so that the adoption is relevant to their needs. Pace them at a rate that's appropriate. Don't overwhelm them and provide them with more of the product than is needed. And then evolve their use of the product in alignment to the change that is happening within their environment and at a pace that is in sync with that change. As you conduct your executive business reviews, as you work with them on the CSP, talk with them about what it is that they're doing in their business, what business outcomes they're seeing, and what more would they like to do, and then incorporate what more of the product they need to understand in order to achieve those goals. So the next poll question is, does your organization consider business maturity as part of the customer journey? No, it's not considered, and you have one standard deployment for all. You do consider business maturity, and you vary your delivery depending on the customer, but you still try to have the customer learn all the product features as quickly as possible, and you might be making adoption a bit hard for them. Or yes, you do consider business maturity, and not only are you delivering depending on the customer, but you're also tailoring specifically what features of the product they should be focusing on to reach their needs.
I think we've probably gotten most of the responses from the poll at this time, Kia.
Great. This is an interesting one.
I know.
The split is 1/3 across all. Very cool. I typically see it more swayed in one area. Well, that's great. For those that are are new to business maturity, what you'll want to make sure is that just take a look and evaluate what it is that you're doing within your journey and your methodology, and are you making it unnecessary? Look where you're adding potential friction for customers in their adoption path, and ongoing adoption, i.e. expansion, and figure out how can you align better to what the customer's business environment is and what their objectives are to get that maturity and right size what they need to do with the product. So now that we've understood what our customers, what's important to them, the other key element to expansion is managing them to success. So big component of customer success is customer management and leading them. Customers come to us because we've got a product that can help their business, and they're looking for us on the prescriptive approach to doing it, what those best practices are. So it's really important that customer success ensures that customers are moving along their journey and continuing to expand their use of the product. And the best way of doing this is to understand not only what those business plans are, to be able to define the activities and milestones that keep that customers motivated, but also focused and accountable, so that they're owning the goals that they're also looking to achieve, and that customer success is a partner in assisting, not solely responsible for the customer receiving their objectives. Very often I see customer success trying to manage the success of the customer by pushing the customer or pulling them along. Truly, the customers need to be accountable for their work, and the best way to keep them accountable is to show them where they are on the journey and how they can keep progressing to their success. So if the customer journey is the route to successful adoption, then the customer success plan is, in other words, a detailed map to getting there. A great CSP should outline key activities and major milestones that customers should complete along the journey, so that not only do they know what they need to accomplish, but they can also then see the progress and impact that they're achieving while they're moving along their journey. And they're including the opportunities to discuss expansion and what should they be doing proactively while they're adopting the product in order to do more with the product. And so the success plan is also very important for the CSM that is managing that, not only from a proactive approach. So if adoption is not tracking as it should be, then the CSP should start highlighting that and be used as a benchmark, so that you can talk to customers about where they might be lagging other customers or similar customers that have gone through this process. Another thing is that the CSP should introduce opportunities for discussions like quarterly business reviews, executive business reviews, regular meetings, so that when key signals occur along the journey, such as, product usage limits have been reached, or NPS survey results were received, or there's new product launches, that they naturally become part of the conversation, the dialogue with the regular relationship that you have with the account, and that you're looking at ways to manage them to proper expansion through that. So we've got to think of the CSP as a means of motivating them, keeping them focused on what they need to do and not going out of scope, and also moving forward so that they are moving along and adopting as they should be in a healthy manner, so that the risk of retention is eliminated, and that sets up the foundation for expansion along the way. So it should be used as a tool to manage the customer to adoption and expansion as they mature. You want to have them outline the key activities. And this is where, if you've got your customer journey map outlined and you know what that journey looks like and what customers can expect along the way, you should be able to very clearly understand what key activities does the customer need to conduct in order to move forward in the journey, and what key activities do you as an organization need to conduct to support the customer through the journey. And the CSP should codify that in there so that you're moving them along that prescriptive approach that you're looking to, which also then includes those opportunities for expansion discussions. The CSPs, you want them to be really clear and concise so that customers know exactly what to do, and that they know when they are responsible for doing something or when they're waiting for you on help. And the best ones that I've seen examples of customer success plans are ones that are very visual and easy to read so that they're simple to follow. We've also talked about they should additionally include time to discuss the ROI that the customer is seeing, so that they actually recognize the impact to their business along the way. That just makes them that much more receptive to expansion opportunities when the time comes. So you definitely want to show them their success along the way and the impact to the business. The more you have numbers and benchmarking, obviously, the better. And then you also want to include the opportunity to discuss expansion proactively as it relates to their business strategy, but also, as I mentioned earlier, when various signals are triggered. The other thing is the CSPs should be updated at least yearly to reflect that the customer's maturity and development. So it's an opportunity for this report card to be reviewed with the customers along the way. And not only do they see their ongoing impact, but they see the evolution of their business and how it's evolving with your technology. That just makes this a natural part of their ongoing journey and that they want to do more with the product. So the final poll for today is, how effectively does your organization use customer success plans? They're missing. You don't use customer success plans. Ad hoc. You use plans when customers want to see an outline of activities, so they ask for it and you hobble something together. Repeatable. You regularly use them and you manage your customers through them. And systemic. Not only do you regularly use them, but you also look at CSPs based on segment and based on the business maturity. So the types of activities and milestones that customers should be looking at start to evolve as the customers evolve.
I think we've probably got the majority of responses in for the last poll.
Okay. So it looks like a fairly even spread amongst the first three, missing, ad hoc, and repeatable, with a small percentage of advanced customer success plans out there. So one thing you want to take a look at is, regardless of which category you fell in, is what more can you do to factor in that segmentation and business maturity so that it's evolving every year for the customer, and makes that expansion discussion a natural ongoing activity. And look to make sure that these customer success plans are motivating, and that they're focusing the customer on activities that are really relevant to them meeting their own business objectives with the product, and that keeps them moving forward. The third component, critical to expansion, is to ensure that customer success is setting up its own success. Once you understand what your customer's business is and what they need to do, and you're managing them towards that success with a prescriptive approach, you need to tie that all together to construct your success. And this is where the power of expectation setting comes into play. By properly managing and meeting customer expectations, you'll also be able to repeatedly deliver a great experience, so that the customer doesn't want to leave, and that you're planting the seeds of receptiveness to expansion discussions and them wanting to do more. And it's always surprising to me, this is such a simple yet really powerful concept, which often gets neglected in the rush of managing customer accounts. But basically, you want to set expectations with your customers so that you can always exceed them and deliver a positive experience, obviously. The concept is straightforward. If you set expectations with a customer at a certain level, and in this case, it's that middle blue line, and anything that you deliver below that, the customer will have a negative experience. The customer's experience will fall short of what they were expecting. And if you deliver above that line or exceed that, the customer will have a positive experience. So the obvious goal is to set customer expectations so you deliver above that line. And this simply means, don't overpromise or overcommit. Deliver what you say you will and generate amazing customer experience. I often see clients that are worried that customers will be unhappy if they don't promise the moon. The fact is that customers aren't unhappy when you say you'll do something, they're unhappy when you don't do it. And so if you say you'll respond by the end of the day, do it, or let them know that you're going to respond at the end of the next business day. Or if you don't know when a product fix might be completed, let them know when you will give them another update. Set a milestone that you can meet. Though all of these items just continue to build that trusted advisor relationship that is really crucial for building a really healthy account that sets you up for success to expanding it. It is totally worse to overpromise and miss than underpromise and deliver. So don't underestimate how powerful this concept is when generating your success, and use this to your advantage. So to summarize the foundational elements of how to generate account expansion, you really want to use that customer journey, segmentation, the concept of business maturity to help you understand your customers in order to target specifically what services are required to assist them and when, and in a way that makes it easy, enjoyable, and manageable for them to absorb and digest within their environment. And then you want to use customer success plans and other like tools, QBRs, EBRs, to manage that customer success and introduce opportunities to discuss the impact that they're realizing and the benefits that they're gaining, and that expansion discussion so that they continue to do more. And then setting that expectation such that you are delivering those positive experiences and building up that trusted advisory environment for you to be able to have the further dialogue on doing more. And as long as your customers are successful and growing with your product, you'll successfully expand revenue. So remember that if you take only one thing away from today, you want to really use that customer understanding to strategically understand how you can, in the most effective and efficient manner, make your product critical to their growth. And it really takes a lot of fundamental, understanding the journey and the segmentation. These tools are available to you to get a prescriptive approach and really fundamental understanding of customers, so that the time and effort that you spend with accounts is not on the generic understanding. It can be very specifically on that one-on-one relationship of the customers that make them unique and that you want to understand to really enable that growth. So what can you take away today to get started on accelerating customer expansion? I've outlined 4 takeaway questions for you to answer. And you can use these to assess how effectively your operations are set up to accelerate expansion, and where you might be unclear, uncertain. I'm happy to discuss those. So if you want to send me the results of your questions specifically for your organization and you wanted to talk about it, please send it to my email, kia@kiacx.com, and I'm happy to offer a free 20-minute consult to today's webinar's participants to discuss that. And with that, I will open it up to Corey and the audience for questions.
Great, thanks for that awesome presentation, Kia, on how to accelerate account expansion. And for the audience, I would also definitely recommend taking Kia up on her offer here for the free consulting session. So we have had some questions come in, so let's just jump right in. One of the questions we got came from an audience member, and I think they are from an event software company. And she says, we're currently segmenting by customer type, for example, venue versus third-party planner. She said, the question was, does it make more sense for us to segment our customers by more needs-based? So, for example, are they at max capacity or do they need more leads?
Yeah, so definitely when I look at segmentation and how to segment, I do look at what are the customer's needs and how can you categorize those. Often I see companies starting to segment customers on how they think they should arrange them, but the needs of your customer will tend to show trends of things that you need to help those customers with. And so then it naturally makes bucketing of like needs together easier and how you service those. So if your customers, if it makes more sense on leads or whatever components those are, I would definitely look at segmenting along that. And often people I find as well think that, you need to segment customers by like size and grouping and that should be done. That is not necessarily the case because their needs might be completely different. And so that's why I like to look at what do generally your customers most often need help with, and look at those as clues for your segmentation axes and start to look at how you could segment accounts that way.
Great. Our next question is on customer success plans. So the question is, how do you scale a customer success plan since this is a very manual and one-on-one effort? For example, if you are in B2C.
Yeah, okay, I love that question. So I actually aim and work with my clients to not have a very bespoke customer success plan for each customer. If you're segmenting customers based on like needs, and there are every customer is a unique, yes, but there are trends that, using the 80-20 rule, 80% of your customers in a specific segment will all experience. And so I look at mapping out a customer success plan that is very aligned to a customer journey and has components of what is required for that segment. And so if you have a foundational framework of a customer success plan that is repeatable and generic, that's what we look to put in place first. Then you have the individual discussions and you augment or broaden out what they're trying to do based on that framework approach. So that you've got this prescriptive approach of how you're going to look at helping customers. That should be encapsulated in your customer success plan. Then thereafter, your dialogue, your interactions, understanding the customer better will then fill in the remaining elements that are unique to that customer.
Great. Kind of a follow-up question on that, also around customer success plans. The question is, they say, a big question for us is which file format and information structure do you capture this information in? Is Microsoft Word good? Maybe customer fields in our CRM? How do you make this information searchable for the entire business and maybe not just the customer success team? So what formats or information sharing?
Yeah, another great question. So fundamentally, ultimately you want it in whatever your corporate CRM system that everyone has access to, that can be seen, and you want it to be very well organized so that everybody understands what each of the data elements means and has a similar vernacular and language around all those elements, so that the information is readily absorbed and understood within the internal organization. That being said, I like a crawl, walk, run approach to building out tools and process in companies. And so if you're just starting out or you're still looking to evolve this this data and this information, collecting it and storing it, and then maybe sharing components, looking at ways to manually distribute if it's a really small company that is sharing it in an approach. Those things are all appropriate. I think it's more important that you first understand what you should be regularly collecting and what's important, so that you're not just collecting everything and dumping it, because you want to be really careful about the information that is important to you, that then the rest of the organization can benefit and use, rather than worrying about the systems dumping everything and not having the data be relevant. So if ultimately you want this system, you want it accessible to everybody, you want the data to mean something, and you want the data to be very clean in terms of what you're looking at and how it is useful in moving the customer through their journey.
That's a great answer. Our next question says, who do you meet with when you're going through these success coaching and success plans? Is it a VP, a director, or an end user?
Another great question. Oh, these are all great questions. So this, again, if you look at, I always tie back to the journey and understanding where the customer is in their evolution. It depends on the nature of the discussion. If you are, looking at diving deep into the product or tactics, then you should be working with your key stakeholders or end users and having those types of discussions. If you are looking at executive business review and you want to show impact and demonstrate the value that the company is receiving from your product, you want to make sure that you've got the key stakeholders in on those conversations as well. And so you do want to pull in as high up in the organization as you can and as it makes sense to be discussing those types of conversations. And so in the customer success plan, that can be a deep dive if you're with the end user level and you're using it to manage them forward. At the C-suite level, when you're doing a quarterly business review, it can be used at a high level to show the progress and track progress. So you can still use information with all the audiences. How you speak about it and what your purpose of the conversation is alters and changes slightly.
Okay. Another question we have that came in is, what do you recommend when clients are resistant to sharing internal business processes?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Well, I guess the first question I would ask the client is, what is the hesitation of showing that, and how do they expect to make change with the technology if the conversation doesn't involve the business process as well? So the question would be then to have maybe a higher level conversation of what is their concerns about sharing business process, and understanding that's part of understanding the customer as well. And there might be very legitimate reasons for doing that, but then make them part of the solution, coming up with the solution to figure out, okay, how can we implement this technology, and how can we help you to modify your processes accordingly to get benefit out of the product if we can't talk about the processes, and have them offer up solutions and suggestions in doing so. And if they don't do that at all, you want to start understanding, why did they buy the product? Level set again as to what their business objectives are. And if their business objectives are to tinker with the product or learn it, you might need to just be that focused and help them with that aspect.
Okay. We are getting a lot of questions all about different kinds of different segmenting questions. So I'm curious, is there any kind of customer segmentation, since it can vary so much amongst companies and industries? Do you have any recommendations for segmentation models that might be good to consider that might apply to any organization?
Yeah, so I think it's important for people just to understand how I approach my philosophy behind segmentation. I fundamentally believe that in all aspects, looking at business maturity, segmentation, CSPs, all the activities that we conduct in customer success to move customers successfully forward, they should be holistically aligned to what does that journey look like? What do your most successful customers, what does that success path of that journey look like? And when you start to understand what that is and what their corresponding needs are in moving forward, those needs start to point to how you could segment, like I discussed earlier in the previous question, or they can talk about how you might talk to the customers or different stakeholders and who should be in what meetings. It informs everything that you do. And so in terms of a segmentation model, I would look at what those needs are. I do have on my website, and I've got a segmentation model of 5 adoption parameters that I look, or key parameters that I look at when I use to segment, to create segmentation models with clients. That said, in a pinch, if I had to just give you a generic answer, I would tell people to look at what the spend potential is of their clients and what their business maturity is within the realm of what the product serves. And when you look at those 2 areas, they tend to give you a pretty decent starting point for segmentation.
Great. Another question we have is, what if a client is overpromised or oversold on something during the sales process? What tips do you have for the customer success team in handling this expectation gap with a new customer?
Yeah, always a tough one, an awkward one to position to be in for a CSM and have that discussion. My advice is always be very transparent and open. Have that conversation sooner than later, because you only delay if there truly has been a disconnect in what the product can do and what was sold. Everybody will appreciate the time and money saved by having an upfront conversation about how there's a disconnect, and then you have the ability to start coming up with a plan that would address that and be able to see what can the product do and what objectives can it meet. If it's a total disconnect, doing right by the customer would mean literally saying, hey, this might just not be a fit, and maybe there was a mismatch in the sales cycle. But generally that doesn't happen very often. It's usually about just level setting on what those expectations are for the customer about the product and what your expectations are about what the customer wants to achieve with the product.
Great. We have another question here, and it is, what is an answer for an objection of a customer saying they're too busy for business reviews?
Oh, I have a blog article about that. That was a popular one. When I hear too busy, for me, it's a proxy of they don't want to or they don't know what to do. And so that to me is a warning flag for it might be overwhelming, too difficult. They literally don't have time, but they are not that interested either. And so you kind of need to tease out what the root cause is and understand, can you make it easier for them? Can you offer some suggestions or solutions that would help them adopt the product and get them using it and getting them more engaged with you? But you really want to understand what is it that they truly, what is it they need to do and get done, and how is it that you could help that? If you also need to look internally at yourself and what your processes are. Are you over fatiguing them? Are you having them do too much and it's not relevant to what they want accomplished? And then they'll tell you that they're too busy because it's not a priority and a concern for them right now. So there's some sort of disconnect between what their priorities are and what you're trying to have them do, and you need to iron those out and figure what those are so that you can get back on path.
I think that's a great recommendation. I think we have time for just one last question, and let's see. Our last question is, what recommendations or tips do you have to get a customer to expand their use of your product?
Yeah, so again, you want to understand, this is where, product marketing and what the initial value prop of your company's vision is for the product. What is it that you're selling in terms of the grand ultimate vision of how companies benefit from your product? And then you want to see where along the path are your customers, what their objectives are, where along that overall arching vision are they? And you want to align to, okay, this is what we're going to do to reach your objectives right now, but keep their sights focused on the bigger picture. So you want to keep them motivated and you want to give them that higher vision, and then you want to pace them accordingly so that they actually want to get to that ultimate end result that might be a lot more than what they originally, the reason for which they purchased the product, but that you want to keep them excited about and doing more. And that often happens. I've seen in customers that are in companies that are most successful in expansion, they look at helping their customers achieve that first initial milestone, get them really excited about the business impact it made and how successful they were, so that customers are just excited about doing more and look, okay, what can we do next? What can we do next? And then they have a plan ready for what they can do next, because they already have that prescriptive approach that says, here, along a business maturity of our clients, at these points would be an opportune time to introduce more elements of the product, or that they could do more for their business. And so you want to use that to the advantage to expanding those accounts.
Great. So we are at the top of the hour now, so I think that will be the end of our webinar, but I just wanted to remind everyone again that the recording will be sent out within the next 24 hours. And also at the end of this webcast, you'll see an attendee survey pop up. And we'd really appreciate if you could take a minute before logging off just to complete that survey to provide your feedback to us. And thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.